Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Argylle, starring Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, Henry Cavill, Bryan Cranston, Catherine O'Hara, Dua Lipa, I don't know if I said that right, please forgive me, Ariana DeBose, John Cena, and Samuel L. Jackson, directed by Matthew Vaughn. Now, before I get into this movie, I was worried in the trailers about that poor kitty cat, and I heard a little fun fact about this movie before I went into the theater, and that is that the cat is actually Matthew Vaughn's wife's cat that was presented in this movie. And does it die in the movie? Let's figure it out. Let's get into the movie. We open the movie in Greece, with Agent Argylle, played by Henry Cavill, going up to Lagrange, played briefly by Dua Lipa, who is an assassin of the spy agencies, and the way they dance is cute until she exposes Argylle as an agent. And he hands over his gun and is almost killed until Kira, played by Ariana DeBose, saves his life. And as Argylle escapes, Lagrange shoots her dead, and by her I mean Kira, and she rides away, and Argylle catches up by going on a different vehicle and goes from building to building rather violently, I'll say. And for a PG-13 rated movie, I'll say, and he does crash the vehicle, and eventually Lagrange almost drives by Wyatt, played by John Cena, grabbing her by hand, and they have a nice cup of coffee and meal, dessert, whatever. And Argylle asks Lagrange to show them a file of who the enemy is, as Lagrange kills herself by putting some poison inside of her. And Argylle and Wyatt break connection with their agency, and we suddenly realize this was a book being written and read by Ellie Conway, played by Bryce Dallas Howard. And this opening scene proves to me Henry Cavill is not a very good actor, in my opinion. And the quick stylish of director Matthew Vaughn is a little bit too much, in my opinion. And also, in my opinion, I don't really like the characters in the book. Ellie comes off kind of annoying in this movie as well, as she can't stop making these weird faces. And it reminds me of how she was a horror girl after The Village and Lady in the Water. We meet Ellie at her book tour at a bookstore in Colorado, and as at one point asked if she has any plans that very night, like a date or something, of the book tour, which sounds very creepy of a fan to ask her that kind of question to the author. But she answers it anyways, and says she has a date. And when she gets back home and says Alfie, the cat, is actually her date, not in the book conference, but at home, and she writes the next Argylle book, as there were 4, and this is book number 5. And Alfie the cat is played by Matthew Vaughn's wife, Claudia Schiffer's cat Chip. And on my first viewing, I was worried about the cat, but the movie does a couple of things to CGI to harm the poor cat. And by definition, meaning it was CGI'd, but there were times the cat did look CGI, but I'm going to spoil this now. Luckily, the cat doesn't die by the end of this movie, which made me happy when the movie was over the first viewing. Ellie rates book 5 and thinks she finishes until she gets a call from her mother, Ruth, played by Catherine O'Hara, saying the ending needed more than what she wrote, and takes a train to her place to Chicago, and she writes and has a hard time getting the right line in there, and she imagines Argylle exists at times, which was weird. Ellie goes on a train with Alfie, and a good-looking guy asks if a seat is taken, and unfortunately she said it is, and regrets the decision until Aiden Wilde, played by Sam Rockwell, comes to sit there and makes her completely uncomfortable while she wants to be left alone, and he brings up how the author of the book is her, and chat briefly, and she blinks. And it goes back and forth between Argylle and Aiden, and a fan comes up and almost kills Ellie until Aiden kicks into action gear while she tries to run away with Alfie, and as they escape, he brings her to a cabin, and this scene is edited kind of badly, like to the point it was choppy. While at the cabin, Aiden shaves his face and gives himself a haircut and feeds Alfie and shows her they're the they're the bad guys in her house. There are bad guys in her house, and one of the bad guys is named Carlos, and he introduces Ellie as well as the audience to Director Ritter, played by Bryan Cranston, shooting a deputy director with a shotgun named Clementine. And after Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which I just reviewed recently, it seems a little weird to have a gun named Clementine, and how worse they are than he is. And I like Sam Rockwell in this movie, as he's always a fun presence. Aiden talks about how he hired a hacker named Buchanan, Buchanan. I don't know how you say that name. Please forgive me. And he takes Ellie and Alfie to London by airplane, as she's afraid of flying because it causes her stress. And Aiden talks to her while the plane is taking off, which helps her calm down. Which was a nice scene for their acting, as it was fine. Aiden takes Ellie to a sightseeing park in London, where she writes a part of a chapter in a book book 5, taking place at the park at Argylle. As Argylle tries to get a call from someone who was supposed to meet him, but is a no-show. But she learns there's a $22 million tracking chip on the back of a cell phone, and tracks Buchanan to an apartment in Colbrook Street in London. And the scene was kind of clever, I guess. Aiden and Ellie go into Buchanan's apartment, and Ellie finds clues until Aiden briefly dances and finds the clue under the floor with a lockbox with cash and a boat key, and finds the anarchist's book like in the book, and the bad guys almost find them, and we have a headache-worthy action scene as Alfie meows and Aiden beats up and shoots the bad guys, and the bad guys throws a grenade at Ellie, and Ellie throws it back while Aiden was in the room. But luckily it doesn't kill him, because remember, this is a PG-13 rated movie. And another way that felt it was Aiden beats them up and tells Ellie to stomp on their heads, and she doesn't, which kind of annoyed me, and more of the bad guys go after them. And Aiden locks them out as they're on the roof, and Aiden lets Alfie the cat out of the bag, and they jump the cat, and the cat briefly flies until Aiden catches him and escape. And the music choice in that scene was kind of fun. In a way, it was entertaining me, but the CGI on that cat looked pretty bad at times. Ellie finishes in the shower, and afterhand, he gets a call from his boss, and he says he was going to kill her. And she overhears it and runs away and calls her parents. And this movie is kind of fun in a entertaining way, but at the same time, it has problems for sure. Ellie and Alfie the cat, I'll say, goes to her parents, which happens to be Ruth and Ritter, while in London. And Ritter at a hotel, surprise, Ritter's her father at a hotel in London. And Ellie tries to explain it to them until Aiden comes in, and it reveals Ritter for who he is. And Ruth was with a British accent and points a gun at Ellie's head. Again, surprise. And they run away without Alfie, and I was worried about him for this portion of the movie until we see him alive later in the movie. And that reveal did catch me off guard, and I'll give the movie credit for that. And Aiden tells Ellie she needs some sleep, and she doesn't go to sleep until we get to the middle of France. And that's when she wakes up and meets Alfie the human as an Alfred Solomon, played by Samuel L. Jackson. And he, along with Sam Rockwell, are the two best characters in this movie, in my opinion. Alfie Solomon tells Ellie the truth about who Argylle is, and who Ellie really is, and that happens to be Rachel Kyle. And she whines about it, who she is, and Aiden shows her she can do these action scenes, and it didn't feel too convincing when Bryce Dallas Howard pulls these moves against Sam Rockwell. And I'm just going to say now, she is very bad in this movie. Aiden explains what happened to Rachel Kyle, as she was brainwashed by Ritter and Ruth, who tricked her to believe she was Ellie Conway. After an accident she had, and Aiden goes to Alfie Solomon, to refresh her memory. And this movie is starting to become a mess. I can't even understand a damn thing that's going on for the rest of the movie. Alfie Solomon leads Aiden and Rachel to Saba Al Bader. I don't know if I said that wrong. Played briefly by Sophia Boutella, on a computer, and takes them to Arabian Peninsula, with Rachel becoming a blonde, and she with Aiden. And I was going back to Spider-Man 3 when she had that blonde hair. I'm not gonna lie, that's not a good sign. But she with Aiden wait for their appointment with Saba, and they dance while Rachel can't dance, but suddenly she can, which didn't make too much sense as she learned she was in love with Aiden, and Saba only meets with Rachel without Aiden as he waits downstairs. And this is a nice dance, but a messy scene in my opinion. Rachel looks at the suspect list on the computer, and the audience learns later in the movie she's on the list of suspects, along with Ritter, Ruth, and Rachel herself is one of the suspects, like I said. And as Rachel goes downstairs, Ruth approaches her and Aiden, and they each have a drink and learn she was one of the bad guys. And the drinks are going to knock them out briefly until Ritter chats with Rachel about how she was Ellie for 5 years and wants to find Alfie Solomon, and says she could get some information out of Aiden. And Ritter shows he can give her life back, as well as Alfie the cat, and she says she hates cats. And he says, me too, and drops the cat. And it made me scared for the cat, like, aw, don't hurt or kill the cat. And Aiden is interrogated by Rachel and confesses she wanted out of the agency, and convinces her who she is, the lover he once had. And she shoots him and tries to look for Alfie Solomon and finds him in France. And Aiden beats up the bad guys, and Rachel finds Alfie Solomon in France, like I said. And this is a dense and messy of a climax thus far. Rachel betrays Ritter and Ruth and beats their asses and gets Alfie the cat, and she takes him like her own pet and goes to the gun shop in their hideout, I'll say. And Aiden shows up and tells him she's on the same side, and tells him she shot him by 2 inches through the heart, but it doesn't kill him. And that's how she'll bring back Kira in the books. And Rachel asks Aiden if he wants to dance, and they dance as well as beat the bad guys' asses. And the song playing in the background, I swear to God, I was thinking of Adele's song from the movie Skyfall. While the spray came some color in that scene, and they escape through the air vents and get to another room where the bad guys shoot at things. They spit out oil, and they stop firing their guns, and Rachel fights with knives against the bad guys while ice skating on the mud, or oil, let's say. And this scene is reminding me of the first Transporter movie, where Jason Statham slips his body in oil and fights the bad guys in oil while he beats the crap out of the bad guys. And that scene in the Transporter and this scene was giving me that flashback. While it was corny for sure, and she kills Carlos by throwing a knife in his heart, and she spins and kills every single bad guy, which did look kind of silly. Ritter gets Clementine pulled out, and Rachel gives a file to download to Alfie Solomon, and Ritter gets attacked by Aiden while Alfie the cat attacks Ritter's face, and the audience learns they were on a ship in the sea, and she downloads the file against the bad guys. Does that feel familiar, like Expendables 4? This feels pretty cliche in my opinion. And it goes back and forth while Rachel hears the music box and attacks Aiden, and it goes back and forth, and and then she fights with, and then she stops and then keeps going, and I was thinking, just shoot the damn music box, and she won't be hypnotized afterhand. But eventually, a masked person knocks off the music box out of her hand and breaks the box, as well as Ruth gets killed. And who is this masked person? Kira from the books, as she made it from Action many years ago, and is the fan who wrote her an email about the heart 2 inches away from the heart. As a fan, And they finish downloading the file, and Rachel, Aiden, and Kira get out of the ship alive as they blow it up, and Rachel finishes the 5th book and releases it as she reads it in a book tour, and is back as Ellie Conway, and with Aiden as her boyfriend, and Alfie got a medal, Solomon, a Medal of Honor from doing the right thing, and Kira becoming the next Steve Jobs, like she brought up at one point in the movie. And Henry Cavill shows up as a man in a yellow shirt, and the credits roll to a mid-credits scene is Argylle, 20 years earlier in a pub, as he explains the twist as he calls himself Aubrey Argylle, and the rest of the credits roll, and this climax was messy for damn sure. And I had a very hard time following it at the end of the day. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 5.2 out of 10. This has some fun moments as it entertained me from start to finish, but at the same time, it has problems for sure. But at the end of the day, it was alright. The editing was choppy and the acting was mediocre. There were times the cat looked CGI to the point it looked pretty bad. But the best two characters are Aiden and Alfie Solomon, as Sam Rockwell and Sam Jackson, as well as the cat, are always a fun presence, as well as the cat, but their performances are adequate in my opinion. And that's the best I can say for this movie. The movie, an hour before it was over, became a mess, and I couldn't understand a damn thing that was going on for the rest of the movie. And this has more good than bad stuff going on in the movie, but this is, at the end of the day, a mild recommendation as a spy movie. It's not great, but it's entertaining. I wouldn't watch it again by any means. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for Matthew Vaughn's career from Layer Cake all the way to here. And I have reviewed the previous ones. And I got back to Layer Cake before I did this movie. So until he directs another movie, put it back, Eggsy.